What's going on, fight fans? Welcome back after a 2-week hiatus. My name is Proto. I am here with Kevdog, and we are Fight Night here, presented to you by KOD Media. We are here to talk about the last card on Saturday night, UFC Vegas 56, and we are going to recap the upcoming pay-per-view card in Singapore, UFC 275, headlined by Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka, fight we've all been looking forward to for the last few months. Kev, how you doing? How's your weekend? How was Saturday night?
Happy and healthy, living the dream, can't ask for much else in life. We had a wonderful card this past weekend, man. 14 fights, 9 finishes, saw lots of action, lots of UFC debuts who made a splash, man. We have the Kareem Silva fight who, we made a great impact in. And then you've got, Rinat Fakhramanov, who was kind of an unknown. And there's one more I wanted to discuss here was Lucas Almeida. I mean, holy cow, this man made such a splash. I mean, to come out there and finish the way that he did, it was spectacular. Pretty light night on the betting side, but really excited to hop into it and, preview UFC 275.
Yeah, I mean, as we mentioned in the spaces, right? Like very underwhelming card on paper, but normally that leads to a very fun-filled fight with a lot of finishes. That's exactly what we got. We even got finishes in some of the women's fights going on Saturday night. We had finishes all across the board everywhere. We had actually a few split decisions as well. Not one that I bet for once. Actually, the last 3 weeks prior, I had hit a split decision prop. But personally, I only had one bet going on this last week. But I know you brought up Kareem Silva here, who you did have a bet on, and you had a bet on her to win in the first round at plus 500, and you cashed that one at the very end of the round, nonetheless.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, there's actually someone that hopped on our Twitter spaces, Mr. Joe. Shout out Joe on the Twitter. He came up with a really intriguing, there's the Darce choke right there, man. That is such an incredible, beautiful choke right there.
Am I wrong in saying that was only the second Darce in female UFC history?
Wow, I'd have to do my research, but if that's what you're saying, I believe it.
I think I heard that on the broadcast Saturday night that was only the second one. So absolutely great finish for Kareem Silva in a UFC debut, coming off the Dana White Contender Series, where I think she got a second round submission in that one, and keeping the ball rolling here in her UFC debut.
Yeah, man. I mean, UFC debut. She's finished 14 fights on the regional scene. I mean, her nickname's the Killer. I mean, this woman isn't going to come out here timid in her UFC debut. And like I was saying, there's a really great strategy when it comes to this that I hadn't really discovered. And it's, when you see that fighter that has that killer instinct that that they're going to finish the fight, if you just dabble that quarter unit on each round to finish, it could be a big payout. And, I did have a quarter on round 1, round 2, round 3. Obviously, it'd be nice, for it to be around 2 or 3, but hey, it ended up being positive and definitely saved my night from not being a great one. So shout out Kareem Silva for getting the job done, and let's get it.
And it's interesting that you bring that up. That obviously one of our Twitter Space listeners, Joe, he mentioned it that he likes to bet fighters to finish in the rounds because it tends to pay out better than if you just bet them to finish inside the distance. And it checks out there because I think you got like plus 500, plus 800, and plus around 12 or 1400 for round 3. And no matter which way you shuck it up, it would be paid better than just betting on Kareem Silva to finish inside the distance. So obviously you would have liked that submission to come about 10 seconds later in the second round. With 6 seconds left, she got that submission victory. But at plus 500, you're going to take that any day of the week, no?
No, 100%. And what's up, Dan? How you doing, my man? And you had a very good call. You had a very light night. You didn't put out a lot of volume, but the one pick that you did put out for the people, hey, you're on the right side of it, man. Jeff Molina coming in hot.
Closer, Jeff Molina.
It was a very, very close fight. Man, you see the end of that decision and the way that he reacted when he heard that 30-27 and then he found out that he won. I mean, holy, it's a very interesting dynamic of judging there because, we're just seeing this trend of, when you have all this control time, how effective is that control time versus someone who's going to strike on the feet. And quite frankly, we've just seen so many inconsistencies and somehow, some way, Jeff Molina got the job done.
Yeah, I mean, those little tiny rabbit punches with his knuckles coming in the clinch, those seem to add up and get him the decision victory. It's funny because you and I spoke off, when I heard that 30-27 being read aloud, obviously Jeff El Jefe Molina, he turned away in disappointment thinking I got screwed by the judges here. They're going to give us August 30-27. But when I heard the 30-27, I felt very confident because I was like, obviously Jeff Molina won that third round. He won it on all three judges' scorecards. So I was like, he had to have gotten that 30-27. And sure enough, they read off El Jefe's name, gave him out at minus 165 about probably a week prior to that fight starting because I knew the line was going to move. It did move up to 195 at one point throughout the week, wound up dropping back down around minus 170, minus 180 area by the time the fight kicked off. So, yeah, light night for me. That's the only bet that I actually gave out, which is very rare. I like giving out a lot of bets. I like giving out a lot of plus money bets. Mm-hmm. So you can see why I didn't have many this past week with only one betting underdog for the most part coming out on top. And that is the guy you mentioned, Lucas Almeida, and he had himself a great fight there. But I want to talk about this bet you cashed. This one I think you came up with on Twitter Spaces, right? When we were talking about that.
I'll tell you what, that was sweaty. Holy cow. I mean, that entire first round, Jackson had the back. He was looking for the submission the entire time. And then even in the second round, he had the potential to finish that in the first.
What did I tell you on that Twitter stream, though?
You have to remind me because you told me a lot of things.
I said Argueta has no neck. I said he can't get choked out because he literally has no neck, and that's exactly what happened. Jackson at one point got his neck, but it's because he has no neck. You can't choke someone that you can't get around his neck.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, man, because that bet that you see on the right side of the screen, man, I mean, I didn't have that written down when we opened up that Twitter Spaces. That was one of those, and it's a very interesting trend because a lot of these bets that come to mind and spark that light bulb in my brain when we talk about it. I think almost every one has been a round prop, and
they've all been overs.
Yeah, they've been those over props, and I think it's just something to keep an eye on. I was really hoping that we'd have that consensus pick there where we both had it, but because I know that you were the one that had brought up the idea, and then just dissecting it without the dude not having a neck, it was a no-brainer. So I mean, shout out to Argueta for sticking through, making that short notice debut after just fighting like 28 days ago in a 5-round fight in the LFA. So props off to him. It's just a dog to do that. And most definitely is more deserving of another fight in the UFC.
Oh, for sure. And, it's funny because I really did like that bet a ton coming into the fight night, but I just did not have the cojones to sweat that one out. Knowing Damon Jackson and his finishing capability and all the unknowns surrounding Argueta, I wasn't willing to sweat it out. I didn't have the stomach to do so. But I mean, even in my Discord, someone asked for the okay on over 2.5 at plus 130. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I like that. I said, you even brought it up. I brought it up on the stream too. Damon Jackson by decision around plus 250, I think it was sitting at. We both gave that one the okay too. So if you're not on these Twitter Spaces, you're missing out on some good information. We're over there dissecting each and every single fight. We're bouncing ideas off one another, bouncing bets off one another. And sure enough, we came up with the winner right there.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you see my boy Snoop in the background saying what up. We don't put in these hours, to give out losers. Like we really dissect each fight, and what keeps me going, I know, and I know you as well, Matt, is we give out these bets. At the end of the day, we're helping people make money, and that's what it's all about. And that, I guess, will lead us to our recap of the night. Wasn't a massive swing. We do have this side bet, Matt and I. First one to hit 100 units.
I got a way to go. I have a little ways to go, but I made a little bump up this week. So
I'll tell you what, you closed the gap by about one and a quarter units. So every unit counts, and we still have to come up with the incentive of when we hit 100 units. I mean, whoever doesn't hit 100 units first, might be in for a rude awakening. But
hey, we almost had a little side bet going on with that Volkov fight on Saturday. So you owe me a shoey.
Oh boy, holy
you owe
moly.
me a shoey right there. But yeah, no, it's great that we're both in the plus money. This is about after 4 weeks of tracking, if I'm not mistaken, right? Starting with the Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje card.
Yep.
And several bad beats have pushed personally my number down. I think my win-loss record is positive, but it just so happens that my two biggest plays in the past 4 weeks have both lost. One of them was Rakic, absolutely tearing his ACL. But
and then the split decision too.
And then the split decisions too. But it's great seeing you up at over plus 9 units. I mean, even after a losing night on Saturday, you're still over plus 9 units. That's something to be heralded. Not a lot of people could say that they have that kind of consistency. And it's proven that when you do lose, you don't lose big. You lost under 1 unit on the night. So that is something to take home and write about. If you've been following the picks, I mean, you can't ask for anything more. You win on a consistent basis, and if you do happen to lose, you're barely losing anything that you're putting in. So, it's a credit to you, and it's a credit to what we're trying to build here.
100%, man. And I'll tell you, this card, it was so strange, man, because all week long I'm looking at this card and I'm like, man, there really isn't a lot of spots. And I texted this to you like I think Monday or Tuesday of last week, and I don't know, man, the DGen in me, there are a few picks that I had put out that hadn't came out the way I wanted to, and in hindsight were just very ignorant picks. And fortunately, Karine Silva saved the day and not making it a bloodbath type of night. But without further ado, why don't we hop into this card this weekend? Oh boy.
This past main event, we got to talk about that Volkov versus Rosenstrike fight. And also, I want to say what's up to Yankees Morning Brew, another KOD Media show right there. Make sure you guys check that out. Everything Yankees, all you could ask for. But yeah, this past main event, don't you just skip over that. I know you had Biggie Boy in that fight. I told you not to take him. I said you got to take Alex Volkov here.
Let's look at this knockout, because shout out Jigga behind the scenes putting this wonderful graphic together. Man, it was a very, very controversial. Let's watch it.
It was only controversial to Rosenstrike bettors.
Let's watch it.
Look at these big boys swinging. Look at that action.
Here we go. He's going to clip him once out of the next
jab. Here comes the jab right down the pipe. Bam.
Wobbled. Miss. Maybe one
crumble there.
Back on his feet.
That's not a bad stoppage.
Very awkward stoppage. Shout out Herb Dean. He's a legend of the sport. He's a legend of the game. He is just a very, very awkward stoppage, because I mean, you see Jairzinho get rocked. I mean, it's clear that he's wobbled.
Boom, mouthpiece.
But then you really look at it, and I see he's covering up there. Then he's right back on his feet. I could watch that a million times and talk about this, but it's just unusual because, again, you look at that exchange and, you see all those bombs coming in from Volkov, but I think only, 15, 20% of those strikes actually landed. So, Jairzinho was rocked, he lost his bearings, and, shout out to Volkov for landing that clean punch in the first round. I don't think many people expected a Volkov KO in the first. I think if anything, it was a Jairzinho KO in the first, Absolutely. But, shout out Volkov, he came in with a solid game plan. And executed to the T. He proved to himself, proved to us and everyone else that, he may belong in the top 7, top 5. I mean, look, he has a few losses versus some of the top guys in the division, but, there's no doubt that he's an elite heavyweight.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that win over a guy like Jairzinho Rosenstrike, who I believe was ranked number 7 in the division at the time, what do you do with Alex Volkov? I know he spoke after his fight Saturday saying he's not necessarily, looking to get that one back against Derek Lewis, the one that he came from behind Derek Lewis did and knocked him out late in the 3rd round. But, I personally think that the only thing you can do with Volkov at this point is give him the winner of that fight coming up between Derek Lewis and Sergey Pavlovich.
Yeah. I mean, Volkov fought Derek Lewis back, in 2018? 2018. So 4 years ago. And, if you look at that fight, man, Volkov was dominating, 98% of that fight, won all 3 rounds. And then in the last, last few seconds of the fight,
he lost 11 seconds left.
Yeah. Last 11, Derek Lewis put his lights out. So it's one of those things. Maybe Volkov gets his revenge now. That's a great fight to put together. There's another fighter in that division who, I think would make a really fun main event. And that's Alexander Romanov, up and coming heavyweight. Yeah. Very, very great prospect in the division, has been absolutely dominant versus everyone that he's faced. And man, he just looks like a tank when you see him on the screen. And, I love what Volkov has done in the UFC, but I feel like he's gotten so many cracks at taking that next step to the belt. Where I think that he's at a point now where he's got to earn that respect back. I firmly believe it. I mean, hey, it was a great first round KO, but, I think taking on an up-and-coming hungry prospect would be great for him. And I think, the area of where Alexander Romanov comes from, matches up really well versus Volkov. And it would be an exciting main event, man. It's crazy because Volkov, I think, has already been in 5 or 6 main events in the UFC.
Yeah, and before this one, we were both saying to each other, like, why are we getting another Volkov main event? But I mean, even you and I said following it, we were like, I wouldn't mind another one. You know, if they gave us another Volkov main event versus someone like Romanov or versus, anyone for the matter, I think it'd be interesting following that first round knockout. But it's really interesting where the heavyweight division is right now. It seems that it's the most loaded it's been in a very long time, maybe ever in the UFC history.
Mm-hmm.
And with all the top guys basically booked up, Volkov has fought Cyril Gahn. He has fought, Derek Lewis before, like we mentioned. He fought Tom Aspinall recently. He just fought Marcin Tybura as well, who's ranked number 10th. So it's a weird situation you find yourself in. But like I said, I like those two matchups that we both brought up here. And Romanov is a guy that needs to start fighting up, after taking a lot of, for lack of better words, bad competition on in his recent UFC tenure. But what do you do with Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rosenstrike, though?
Man, I mean, it's really unfortunate news for Jairzinho because I think this fight really it puts him in a different sector of that division. Like he's just not that elite, type of Derek Lewis-esque that we see. It's kind of just like a mini me of Derek Lewis, the way I see it. Nothing to what the Black Beast is like or is. But man, of course you have Chris Daukaus, who's there in the division without a fight, who's on the table. And, I was looking at the division today and there is one fighter there who, it's interesting because, Jairzinho has already fought him, and that's Andrei Arlovsky. He KO'd Arlovsky a few years ago, Jairzinho. And, since then, man, Arlovsky has gone on an absolute tear. I don't really know what's next for him. But I mean, he's won like 4 or 5 straight in the UFC, all unanimous, and
split.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, he did have a few.
Mostly a split decision machine.
Yeah, but nevertheless, it's going to decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't want to get too off on a tangent on Arlovsky, but man, that guy's a legend. He debuted at like UFC 12.
They're going to keep. I think he's in the position now. They're going to keep giving him those tomato cans. Just let him beat up the young guys that are trying to come up. But I like that you mentioned Chris Daukaus. I know we spoke about this before. I think that's a very good matchup for both of them. Both are coming off a few losses. Against the top half of the division. They both shown some weaknesses. But when it comes to offensive striking, fireworks. That matchup is full of it, and it would be exciting. It doesn't have to be a main event for either one. I think they both would fare better in a 3-rounder. So, that one makes sense to me. But I do want to move on to this co-main event that we had between Movsar Evloev versus Dan Ige. And Evloev really proved himself both in the striking and the grappling department here. I mean, he absolutely dominated Dan Ige, cut him up. I don't know how Dan Ige ate that flying knee. I think he ate 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken. But Evloev really, really, showed something impressive here. And with the record of 16-0, he's going to be moving up from that number 13 ranking here, if not just take Dan Ige's 10 spot right there. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to let you go first here, but I think we're on the same page with what you do with Evloev coming up next.
Yeah, first off, shout out to Evloev. I mean, he came in there and absolutely dominated Dan Ige, Dan 50K. And the only way I can explain him surviving that knee is that Hawaiian blood, it becomes just so gritty and so tough. Was able to survive. I think Evloev just showed great skill. Something that I would have liked to see a little bit more is a little bit more instinct and wanting to finish the fight. I did throw out a quarter unit prop on a submission for Evloev, and man, he had so many opportunities to execute there, had his back multiple times, was on top, but, just didn't really show that willingness to want to finish the fight. It was more or less just trying to control, do what he had to do and just be dominant, but much respect to Evloev. He came in and got the job done. But yeah, no, I mean, Ige's in a difficult spot. You don't really know what they do with him. Just kind of let him go, nothing too important within this division. But when you look at Evloev, man, he's so young, such a great prospect, 16-0. I mean, that's no easy task. There's a glaring opponent that is just so obvious, and it's Bryce Mitchell, man. I mean, Bryce Mitchell, he's been waiting for his fight. A lot of guys have been, being scheduled fights here and there, but he's still left without a fight. And I know Bryce Mitchell has been talking about snagging that top 5 guy, but man, this is a fight versus Evloev that, if he wins this fight, that would really give him an opportunity to compete for the belt. And, it's such an interesting matchup because Bryce Mitchell is so similar to Evloev. Just the way they wrestle, their tenacity, just their intensity in the octagon. That they're going to bring it. It's not going to be anything timid. It's the fight to make. I mean, you look at the standings and you just circle that name and get it done.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I tweeted this out right after Evloev's fight finished with Dan Ige, and I said, we have to get Movlar Evloev versus Bryce Mitchell in a 5-round main event. Book it now. It's a wrestler's dream matchup. If you're a fan of wrestling, and not boring wrestling, just hug them to the ground. There are people that are actually working on top, working to get finishes, throwing bombs from the top. That is a fight that I personally, as a fan of the UFC, I couldn't think of a main event that I would look forward to more than that matchup.
100%, because both of these guys are on that uptrend. If I'm not mistaken, I know Evloev is undefeated in the UFC, but Bryce Mitchell, if I'm not mistaken, is also undefeated in the UFC.
Yeah, I think in his UFC career he's undefeated. I think his one loss may have came on. I feel like it was on Ultimate Fighter, if I'm not mistaken. But
okay,
he's a top guy, Bryce. I think he's 7 right now. He's right behind Arnold Allen and the Korean Zombie, who are the only people ahead of him that don't have fights booked. But, Allen versus Korean Zombie makes a ton of sense. The amount that Allen's been fighting back in the rankings, it just makes sense to give him the guy that's available ahead of him. I mean, you could make the same argument for Bryce Mitchell. I know Evloev did call out Arnold Allen after this fight. So, hey, maybe that's a matchup the UFC wants to make. I don't know if it's a matchup that Arnold Allen is personally going to accept, but you never know.
Yeah, no, I firmly believe that Arnold Allen is trying to duck Evloev. I mean,
I would too.
Sugar beans, holy smokes! I mean, Evloev called out Arnold Allen, and a few hours later, I'm scrolling on Twitter and I see him, Arnold Allen, shouting, calling out the Korean Zombie, like he just saw Evloev call him out, and he's trying to go out into another door. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to touch a 16-0 Russian in the UFC with that type of performance. But, man, that Bryce Mitchell fight would be so electric. And not to get too off on a tangent, but, man, to see Arnold Allen fight Korean Zombie, I just don't want to see it, man. I mean, Arnold Allen is going to dominate him, and Korean Zombie should just retire, man, after that performance versus Volkanovski. But, that Bryce Mitchell fight would be spectacular, especially in the Apex, which would be really interesting in the smaller cage.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, as Bryce Mitchell said, Hobby Lobby or Abu Dhabi, it doesn't matter. Just get him a fight. So this is one that I think everyone would like to see. I think you could even make this one of the fight nights that are in front of a crowd as well. I think people would really enjoy to see that matchup. Bryce Mitchell is a fan favorite. Evloev coming off that fight, it makes a ton of sense, undefeated in the UFC. But now I think, Kev, you jumped the gun earlier.
Hey, I was getting so excited. I mean, fighting Singapore, like how much real can this get as a UFC fan? I was getting too excited. But before we do, I want to give a quick shout out to KOD Osborne. And the reason why is because he is the first UFC fighter in the flyweight division to knock out someone in 2022.
Really?
Yes. And the only exception, the only argument you can make is Malcolm Gordon, who won by technically a TKO because his opponent injured his arm in the flyweight division. But a pure knockout TKO, KOD Osborne, first flyweight in the UFC to finish in 2022.
Shout out KOD Osborne. Hopefully they make that fight with Jeff Molina. They both fought Saturday night. KOD had the call out ready after he won by knockout. So that's a fun one. 2 young guys coming up the rankings in that division. But shout out KOD Osborne. And let's get into it. UFC 275, Glover Teixeira. First time defending the belt there, the light heavyweight belt. He takes on probably the most mystical fighter to enter the UFC, other than Khamzat Chimaev, Jiri Prochazka here, which is just, the most typical striker versus grappler matchup you can make in the UFC, in all of the UFC.
Man, Glover Teixeira just gives me that excitement of, seeing the trajectory of his UFC career. Reminds me so much of Charles Oliveira, just the way, it's similar in the sense of it took him this long to reach this stardom. And man, Glover Teixeira, man, I believe, and I've mentioned this to you before, UFC 172, fought John Jones in Baltimore, Maryland, got his butt kicked 50-45, a unanimous decision. And we're talking 8 years later, he's out here, representing the light heavyweight division. I mean, God bless Glover Teixeira, 42 years old. And then you have a guy in Jiri. I mean, it's just so spectacular. What type of prospect this is. I don't think we've ever seen a fighter this unique in the sense of only having 2-3 UFC fights. Two UFC fights and already fighting for a belt. I mean, come on. I don't care who you fight on the regional scene, where you come from. That is just miraculous to come to this organization and already be fighting for the belt.
And not only 2 fights and fighting for the belt, but 2 fights, and he's the betting favorite fighting the defending champion for the belt, a defending champion who has been fighting in the UFC since, I believe, 2006. It's remarkable, especially when you consider how Glover, I guess you could say Glover has 2 paths to victory in this one, right? Well, 3. You could say 3 paths to victory: knockout, submission, decision. Yuri has 1 path to victory, and that is to catch Glover Teixeira with one of his crazy uppercuts, spinning elbows, spinning back fists, whatever you want to see. He throws them all. But it is very interesting. This betting line really caught me off guard. I figured you would get Glover as a slight favorite, but he is an overwhelming favorite right now as it stands. Yuri Prochazka, last I saw, is sitting around minus 190, which is insane.
And don't get too excited on that Yuri side, because if you look at that Glover side, 11 fights in the UFC as an underdog, 8-3 in those fights. So,
yeah. And we all know the trend with defending champs as the underdog as well. That is a very positive trend to back.
Yeah, it is. And man, it's just like, Glover has come so far in the UFC, so far as a mixed martial artist, and is a true legend of the sport. And to envision the fact of him getting knocked out in the first round by Yuri will give me the type of feeling that I got when our boy Tony got absolutely demolished by Michael Chandler.
It's a good way to put it. That's a very good way to put it.
I'm hoping and praying that we just see a nice competitive first round, and then the rest can be how it is. But man, Yuri, it's just so incredible. Like he's just such a pure mixed martial artist. Like just his style, like his exoticness, the way that he addresses the crowd before the fights, the way he has this spirituality about him is so incredible, and it's so entertaining. We could potentially be seeing a potential UFC light heavyweight champion for a long tenure in Yuri Prochazka, or we could see Glover shut this man up and prove that he is one of the best UFC light heavyweights of all time.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's not for nothing. Glover has been smashing people in this run to becoming the champion. He has been absolutely dominating everybody that they put against him. And, like we said, Yuri's only had 2 fights in the UFC right now. Big ask of him to come in here as a betting favorite and get the job done. I don't want to get too into the technical analysis, but Yuri has shown a lot of defensive, deficiencies when it comes to striking alone, not even to mention his takedown defense. I know Dom Reyes, I think, got him down on 1 attempt, if I'm not mistaken, in their last fight. So Glover is just another animal in there. He is determined. We all know that this old man isn't going to give up that belt easy that he worked so hard to attain. So Singapore, I think that favors, Yuri a little bit, I guess, if it favors anybody. But it's going to be an interesting matchup for sure, and I really can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's been just such a largely anticipated matchup, and I just love Glover, man. It's just, the thought of that adversity, right, of losing the belt 8 years ago, having all these bumps in the road, then coming out, mauling people, just continuing to evolve, still having that hunger. I mean, dude, you just don't see a lot of 40-year-olds in mixed martial arts putting their lives on the line. It's just and performing at this level, this caliber. It's spectacular, and we're going to be in for a show for this fight. 100%.
Absolutely. And it's funny because this co-main event that we have going on here, right? You have the new champion defending their belt for the first time in Glover Teixeira in the main event. You come down to the co-main event, you have a bad woman in Valentina Shevchenko defending her belt once more against Taila Santos. I think as it stands right now, Valentina Shevchenko is sitting around minus 650, minus 700 on sportsbooks, with the comeback on Santos sitting around like plus 550. So interesting fight here. People are saying that it's Valentina's toughest test in a few fights here coming up. So, the jury's still out on that. The beauty of this sport is we'll find out on Saturday. But you think you're going to be willing to pay that minus 600 price on Valentina?
I don't know, man. It's tough because first off, shout out to Amanda Nunes for literally being Antonina or Shevchenko's dominant mother, or whatever you want to call it, dominant force. Who, you look at Valentina, it's a very, very interesting trajectory because 2 of her first 5 fights in the UFC were versus Amanda Nunes, who is regarded as one of the GOATs in women's mixed martial arts. Wotes. There you go. And, after that second loss to Amanda Nunes, Shevchenko has gone on a tear, winning 8 straight in the UFC, just being so dominant. I mean, she just hasn't shown any weakness, just coming out here and absolutely smashing these women. And then you look at a woman in Santos, just a very interesting prospect because she's 19-1 overall. She's only had a handful of fights in the UFC. And I just don't think I've seen enough of Santos to say, okay, maybe this is her toughest test. Quite frankly, Shevchenko's toughest test is going to be the French woman, Manon Fiorot. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Fiorot, facing Caitlin Chukagian, I believe, in September. I think that's going to, well, of course, the winner of that fight is going to get the most likely Shevchenko here. I don't want to say the winner of this fight because I think we all know that Shevchenko is going to come out here and dominate. Man, if Santos can get the job done, I mean, this would be one of the biggest upsets in UFC history, probably top 5. And, again, I just don't know if I've seen enough out of Santos to, come out here and beat Shevchenko. I mean, Santos, she did finish her last time out. She did finish her fight the last time out. But I just don't know, man. I just don't know if I've seen enough of Santos to really make this competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I know you mentioned she's 19-1 overall in her career. Only loss coming via split decision. So she's very proven, in the UFC. I think she's had 5 or 6 fights in there with the lone loss, of course, coming in the UFC promotion. But she's definitely talented. I remember her fight against Roxanne Modafferi a few fights ago. Obviously, Roxanne, you're not going to compare her to Valentina Shevchenko or anyone in the top 5-10 of that division anyway. But I remember watching that one and I was like, this girl's got something, Taila Santos, she's a dog. And I think that she has the mentality that she's not like in David versus Goliath matchup here. I think she's more of a matchup in a mindset that it's, it's a pretty level matchup. She really thinks she can win this one, which I think is very important when you're fighting someone like Valentina Shevchenko, because time and time again, when you have people fighting these dominant champions, they beat themselves before they even enter the octagon. We see it all the time, especially, in women's MMA. It's not a knock on women's MMA. It's just we see it with the likes of Amanda Nunes, with Valentina Shevchenko. We see it on the women's faces when they're walking into the octagon that it's almost like they're gone, which made the upset win by Juliana Pena so spectacular later last year because, it's the unthinkable, but it all starts with the mindset. And I think Taila Santos really does have a mindset where she thinks she can dethrone the champ, that she's the one who has what it takes. And, one bet that I do like for this fight right off the bat is the over 3.5 rounds. I think that if you could bet the over 3.5, you're looking good because we have seen Taila Santos has never been finished before. I think in Valentina's last fight, she got the finish in round 4 against Lauren Murphy, if I'm not mistaken. And, Shevchenko only recently has become a big finisher. She typically would win her fights by decision, and I think that that's a very viable option. It's going to be a likely, outcome for this fight is Valentina by decision. So early off the bat, before all the film tape and handicap, and those are my 2 leans on this one. I'll definitely go over 3.5, and I would go Valentina by decision. I don't know what that line is sitting at, but definitely gut feeling right now off the bat.
Yeah, always got to trust the gut, man. And you mentioned a good point, man. I mean, not too long ago, we saw a massive upset in the women's mixed martial arts, right? Juliana Pena dethroning Amanda Nunes. Absolutely. Nobody saw that coming, quite frankly. And to be finished, too. I mean, oh, my gosh, that was such a surprise. I remember watching that fight. I was like, what in the world is going on? I didn't have nothing on it, but I was just like, man, if you believe in something, if you have that mindset, you can get the job done. And, there's no doubt that Taila Santos has a very, very superior athleticism, right? Like she seems very elusive and quick.
Yeah, she's a beast.
And she's Brazilian too. So that she's going to be trained on the ground, right? She's going to have that ground game. And I think that she should stay clear of a submission. I think that if she stays clear on the feet and avoids the knockout, we could see this go all 5.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And you bring up that she is Brazilian, fighting on the undercard of the infamous Brazilian of Glover Teixeira right there, right? A legend in Brazil in mixed martial arts. So, that always adds a factor to these fights. And, that is not the only intriguing women's MMA fight on this main card. You could argue that it's the second most intriguing fight with the 3-rounder coming up rematch of Zhang Wei Li versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And this is a fight that everyone's been wanting to see for the past few years. Joanna Jędrzejczyk makes her return to the UFC octagon, I believe, after a 2-year hiatus. And a lot of people wondering what type of shape is she going to be in coming into this fight, and how is Zhang Weili going to bounce back from those 2 title losses to Rose Namajunas?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Rose Namajunas, again, she is like, she owns these women, right? I mean,
Yeah.
last 2 wins for Joanna, or excuse me, last 2 fights for that matter for Joanna is 2 straight losses to Rose Namajunas, and then Wei Zhang Li, Wang Zhang, whatever you want to call it. She also has back-to-back losses to Rose, so it's a really interesting matchup. You know, Joanna taking this layoff since March of 2020, and it's very interesting because I've seen lots of videos of Joanna over the last few months of just where she's at in life, and she seems like she's in a very, very good spot. You know, I mean, this woman, it's fascinating because, you know, she came into the UFC, had 8 straight wins in the division, and then all of a sudden, Rose Namajunas literally came out of nowhere, man. I remember that first fight. I just think that there really wasn't a lot of people backing Rose in that fight, and she was just so unproven, right? I mean, moving to Esparza back, you know, earlier in that career, and I don't think anyone saw her beating Joanna back to back there. And you know, I think Joanna taking this 2-year hiatus off is really good for her, taking this time to, you know, just reflect, you know, get back to her senses, heal up, and ultimately evolve back to the top. And at the end of the day, she's still, you know, at the top of the division, facing an elite fighter in Zhang, and it's going to be a dogfight. I haven't looked at the line recently. I know Joanna's probably at plus money.
She's at plus 140. Zhang, the comeback on Weili Zhang right now is minus 160. So I think I agree with that line there. I think it's pretty efficient. I know you mentioned that you think that the 2-year hiatus is good for Joanna. A lot of people, like you also mentioned before, you know, she looked like she was very content in life, right? Like she wasn't no rush to come back to the octagon. Could have that Conor McGregor effect where she's making good money outside of the UFC that she doesn't necessarily need to fight. What is she necessarily fighting for now? I know she mentioned it before that all she wants to do is fight for the belt, and this is a fight that's going to get her there. We did just see her recent teammate last Saturday, Karolina Kowalczyk, come out and absolutely dominate Felice Herrig. And I know that she mentioned that a big reason why is because she reached out to Joanna Jędrzejczyk, 2 fellow Polacks right there trying to train together. So iron sharpens iron in that training room at American Top Team down there. She's surrounded by top talent. So it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup. And I would be remiss to not mention what Joanna Jędrzejczyk looked like at the end of their first fight together with her absolute balloon head sticking out. It was one of the craziest UFC sights of all time, what her face looked like after that fight. So it would be pretty remarkable if Zhang could do that again to her.
Yeah, and man, yeah, this is just going to be such a fun fight because, you know, again, it's a rematch, and you know, both women are hungry, you know, and I think that's going to be the key here. Both women are going to come out here and be electric. I certainly don't foresee this fight to be a timid fight. I think both women are going to come out heads first, meet at the center of the octagon, and whoever survives wins. And haven't really done much of the handicapping side for this fight. But right off the bat, I think that we could potentially see a finish here. I think that both women have really nothing to lose. You know, it's just like, again, both these women are right on the cusp of getting a shot at the belt. And yeah, I mean, they've kind of been there. They've lost in the UFC and they know what's at stake. And I think both of these women are here to make a statement. And I don't foresee this being a snoozy for 3 rounds.
No, I mean, it was an electrifying first fight. It is important to note that this is a 3-round fight, which is very important in this woman's fight, and which typically would be a 5-rounder. So 3 rounds, you could say that favors Joanna, I guess. You know, obviously, we're both gonna have to look into this fight more before our spaces on Saturday before we give full breakdown and analysis into this one. But it definitely is going to bring some fireworks here. And the fight before this one, I think, is a banger as well in that flyweight division. We have Rogerio Bontorin fighting Manel Kape, who just popped for steroids before his last fight. So it's going to be interesting what kind of mindset he has coming into this one. But I know you're very high on Manel Kape. A lot of people are. You know, I'm obviously on record saying that I'm not too crazy about this kid. I don't think that he is, you know, the future of that division as many people do. And I think that he is a very tough test here in Rogerio Bontorin, who very much like Damon Jackson last week, he's a human backpack. If he gets on top of you, it is very hard to get him off.
100%. And Kape, he comes out. And the reason why I'm so incredibly high on him, for the record, is he just has such incredible power for that division. My goodness.
Yeah.
he just has that one punch, man. He comes out here so electric. He ain't going to be coming out slow by any means. And you have a guy in Bontarine who, he's lost 3 of his last 4. His last time out, he lost a split decision to Brandon Raw Dog Royval. And, this is a really interesting fight, man, because Bontarine, is he going to be the definition of a journeyman by losing this fight, or is he going to come out here and prove to everybody that he's here to belong in the UFC? Because I'll tell you, if you're losing 4 of your 5 in the UFC, I don't think you deserve a job.
No, I agree with you, but it is important to note that, Raw Dog is way better on the ground than Manel Kape is, and that's where he got the better of Bontarine in that fight. And then as well, Bontarine fought Kai Kara France a year and a half ago, I believe, and he dominated that fight for the first 4 minutes and 50 seconds of it in the first round, up until he got absolutely clipped and knocked out with just about like 1 or 2 seconds remaining in the first round. So, it's important to take that full picture in when you're looking at this fight. This also comes down to, for me, a lot of value. You have Manel Kape opening up at minus 220 on the sports books, with the comeback on Bontarine around plus 180. I think that there's tons of value in that Bontarine side there, especially with his multiple paths to victory. And unless Kape can point fight him or knock him out, it's looking like a Bontarine submission to me.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, this is a Kape KO or bust situation. If I'm taking Kape on this weekend, it's 100% going to be the fact that he's going to be going in there to knock Bontarine out. Because if this goes all 3 rounds, I mean, my goodness, I can't imagine Kape in the 3rd round. I just foresee it. He would just be gassed straight up. And, Bontarine could potentially finish this fight. Who knows? But, I wonder what that Bontarine by decision prop would be, just out of curiosity. Definitely, I feel like would be really good value there. But, look at Kape, his first 2 fights in the UFC, took a loss and came out, rebounded, and has 2 straight first-round finishes. And I don't care who you fight. That's impressive. So, he's got a lot of confidence coming into this fight, a lot of momentum. And he firmly believes that he's going to come in here and put on a show and knock out Bontarine.
This guy's also a little bit crazy, right? I think he thinks that he's 1 fight away from the title. I think he's ranked around number 10 or 12 in that division. But, he said after his last fight he was ready for a title after beating Zalga Sumagulov. We both know that it takes a little bit more than that to get to the top of the flyweight division. But that is definitely going to be a fight full of fireworks, like most of this main card. And I know you and I both want to give a shout out to one more fighter before we wrap this up, and that is Mr. Andre Fialho, who is making his 4th UFC fight of 2022 and his 3rd fight in under 2 months, which is just absolutely crazy. He's coming off back-to-back knockout wins in the UFC, and this guy has shown that he has real power for the division. And he's taking Jake Matthews, too, who is not an easy night at the office, but where it sits, I think Fialho's only minus 150.
Yeah, this is such a fun fight, man, because, Fialho, this is his 7th fight in 12 months, 4th in the UFC since January. That's just so miraculous. And the reason why he's able to do it is because he fights and finishes these fights early, man. He's coming out here to take your head off. And, I love Jake Matthews, though. This guy we've literally seen grow in front of our eyes. Yeah. Let's put these numbers together. This man is 27 years old, and this is his 16th UFC fight. I'll be honest. I've been watching UFC since 2007. I can't confidently say that there's a UFC fighter at the age of 27 in the history of the promotion that already has 15 fights under his belt at that age. That is incredible. Making his debut at 20 years old. We've seen great evolution. We've seen, go in there with some absolute dogs and, him go into the fire and come out victorious or on the other side of it. So this is a really interesting fight and a really important fight for Fialho here because, he has so much hype around him, coming in here, making a splash. And this is a fight where he's facing a guy who's been seasoned. He's been there, done that. And we're going to see if Fialho is either the real deal or maybe he needs a few more fights to, just take it to that next level.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We saw Fialho come out of 2 fights ago, knock out Miguel Baeza, who is, he's dealing with a little bit of mental issues, I think, after suffering a few losses. It really set him back considering how high of a prospect he looked like. And then in his last fight, obviously, he got thrown a meatball there by getting the short notice debutant. And, he did what he had to there, but we did see him get rocked in the first round. He was in a little bit of trouble before he landed that knockout blow. And Jake Matthews, like you said, he has tons of experience. The only fighter that comes to mind that could have possibly had that many fights at that age in the UFC is
John
the
Jones?
lightweight champ, Charles Oliveira.
Charles Oliveira.
How young he entered the UFC and how many fights he has under his belt. But this is definitely a good fight. I'm not ready to give a prediction on this one. I think the line is a little bit more accurate than people make it out to be, which makes me think that Jake Matthews might be the side here, because I know everyone's saying Fiallo should be minus 200. He should be, this, he should be that. But, where it does stand, last year he was fighting in Bellator, and a year before that he was fighting in the PFL. So losses in both promotions. So it's not like I'm ready to give Fiallo all my money. I do think that this is a huge fight for him, like you just mentioned, to either prove himself to be a real contender in this division in the UFC, or maybe he was just like a hot trend that kind of fizzles out here in Singapore. But he did beg for this fight after his last one, so it would not be a good look if he gave this one up.
No, yeah. I mean, when you call out a guy, it's one thing to lose to a guy when you're randomly matchmade by the guys up top, but when you're calling out someone like, okay, this is who I want, and you go out there and lose, I mean, God, my goodness, I would love to, I would love to see the record, right, of someone calling out a name, and how do they perform in those fights, right? Because I mean, you've got to think, like, if you've got someone in your mind after that fight, like, okay, if I win this fight, I'm gonna call out this guy. You've got to know in your mind that, okay, the reason I'm calling out this guy is because I know that I match up, great stylistically, and you know that you can put him out, put his lights out. So yeah, that's going to be such a fun fight. Is that the fight that's opening the card, the Fiallo fight?
I believe it is the prelim closer. I believe that's
the prelim closer. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, we're in for an absolute treat. I mean, there's so many other great fights on this card, and yeah, no, I mean, that main event, man, it's just been so highly anticipated for so long. And it's one of those things, man, because, if, let's say, Glover Teixeira does win, right? Wouldn't you just love to see John Jones come out the woodworks? I know he said he's coming to heavyweight. I know it. I know. But the fact that, like, Glover Teixeira's trajectory, it's just a UFC fan's dream, right? I mean, just the trajectory of both guys, and God bless John Jones. Hopefully, comes back in 2022, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, Kev, I can't wait to talk about this card more with you on Saturday morning in our Twitter Spaces at 11 a.m. Eastern at Fight Night KOD on Twitter. Kev, you got anything else you want to say before we wrap this thing up?
Nah, man, I absolutely love this sport, man. It's such a pleasure of mine. And to break it down to someone that has that same mentality, it's such a treat for me. It's just such a great hobby. And I love that we have this platform to bring it to life. So I'm super excited to, the future, super bright. This card this weekend is going to be an absolute banger. And let's rock and roll, baby. Let's catch this money.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you for joining us, fight fans. We hope to see you in the Twitter Spaces Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern, as I mentioned. Thank you to my guy Jigga in the behind the scenes here, setting everything up. Thank you, KOD Media. Thank you, Knights of Degen. We are out.